Welcome back. Now, tonight you're looking into the Executive Order number 1 of 2020 that was issued by President Uhuru Kenyatta yesterday. To look into the implication of that executive order, we are having Alex Kubo, who is a lawyer and a political analyst, to look into the issues that the changes that the executive order has brought into place. Welcome, Alex.
How are you, Irene?
Fine, thank you. Now, let us look into the Executive Order number 1 of 2020. What are the implications of that particular order? We have seen lawyers and political analysts read from different scripts when it comes to that order, especially on what happens to the office of the Deputy President, William Ruto. Do you think the Executive Order has made any changes in the office of Deputy President?
Absolutely not. I think the confusion arises when Kenyans are very quick to wear the political spectacles when we are reading into various things, including the executive order and various pronouncements from the head of state. That is where the confusion arises. But in the real sense, if you look at the functions of the deputy president, I think that is where we should all be focusing on at this juncture to try and unravel them. And Article 147 provides that the deputy president shall be the principal assistant of the president and shall perform functions conferred to him or her by the constitution or assigned to him or her by the president. That means he is under the president, right? Mm-hmm. So there is no structural changes with respect to the office of the deputy president. And there is no one time that the deputy president has had his own constitutional office. I think the other thing that that arises is that we are looking at his physical office, his office in town, around, along Arambe Avenue Annex, if I'm not wrong. People are asking themselves, will we close shop in that particular office? But that is not the issue. The issue is, what is the constitutionality of the pronouncement by the president? It does not make any changes. The deputy president is number 2 from the president. It could have been funny or somewhat unconstitutional if you could have had a cabinet secretary coming number 2 to the president. But as far as the constitution or the law provides, nothing has changed. Absolutely nothing has changed. The confusion arises whereby the president says that he's under me, he's under the president. Constitutionally, the deputy president is the principal assistant. So automatically, he's under the president. So no changes have been made whatsoever.
But what about the perception that has been the presidency? You have heard that term, the presidency, which means that the president and the deputy president, although the president is above the deputy president, the notion of the presidency will somewhat create some sort of clout or some sort of glamour in the office of the deputy president. And some have argued that due to the changes that the president has made, then it means that the office of the deputy president do not have that glamour it had when we were looking at it as the aspect of the presidency.
The question that begs for an answer at this juncture is, what is the presidency? Is it a constitutional office? What we have in Article 130 provides for the executive. Executive is the president, the deputy president, and the rest of cabinet. There is nothing like the presidency. It's the executive. Mm-hmm. And in the executive, the principal deputy to the president is the deputy president. Anything to do with glamour are functions that are assigned to the deputy president, either by the constitution, him being the principal assistant, or other assignments that are conferred to him by the president himself. We know that the deputy president chairs, I think, Intergovernmental Budgetary Committee. He's the chairperson of that particular committee. Those are functions that are conferred to him by the president. So there should not be confusion whatsoever. The confusion arises when we wear our political spectacles to try and read into it.
All right, away from that, let us look at what Chief Justice David Maraga raised today. Of course, in particular, the issue by the executive order that the commissions, the constitutional commissions, will be under the president, will be under the office of the president. And Maraga now says that that is an error and should be corrected, since The Judicial Service Commission is under the arm of the judiciary. Do you hold the same opinion?
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think that is a glaring omission by the president. I want to believe that the Attorney General did not advise the president accordingly, because the Constitution is very clear when it comes to the doctrine of separation of powers, right? Mm-hmm. Initially, in the old Constitution, the Constitution that was there before 2010, we only had 3 arms of government. Right now, we have the 3 arms of government and other constitutional offices that are independent. So there is no way that the president can purport to usurp the powers of those constitutional offices, including the judiciary. So I think it's kudos for to Maraga that he has turned against such a, as far as I'm concerned, it's a way that the president is trying to stamp his feet to achieve some unknown objectives. But I think it's a very good step and by Maraga, and I want to hope that the entire Judicial Service Commission will be behind him, and the courts as well, so that at least they can put their foot down and say that even though there are other machinations going on, the Constitution and the law has to be followed, has to be adhered to the letter. I think that was a gross mistake by the executive.
The Attorney General Kihara says that Chief Justice David Maraga somewhat read the order or interpreted the order in a wrong way. That whatever Chief Justice David Maraga he is raising is not based on what the executive order was saying. Perhaps what could the Attorney General be reading that Maraga is not reading on the same order?
I think we do not need a rocket scientist to interpret for us the contents of that executive order. I think even as a class 8 student who has been serious with his English and interpretation to it will easily interpret the executive order. The executive order was aimed at, if you look at how it was framed and the architecture of it, you will realize that executive order was supposed to try and put everything under the presidency and give the presidency more powers than what is provided for in the Constitution. So Maraga, how Maraga, the swiftness in which Maraga responded to was how any other Chief Justice anywhere in the world with the same Constitution would have responded to. So I think it's a glaring error from the AG. I think the AG has been making, legal blunders. To me, I think the AG is trying to read the law, is trying to manipulate the law to achieve certain political goals, and that is why he's finding himself in sort of a quagmire. Because every lawyer who has made comments, people who have appeared in other media houses, televisions, radios, they're saying the same thing. It's very clear that there are certain things that the AG wanted to achieve to help the executive achieve.
All right, now let us move to matters. Nairobi County, looking into particular the Nairobi Metropolitan Service, it has now been put under the office of the president, and now it will receive its fund from the Consolidated Fund Services and not the county government of Nairobi. Some have said that the move by President Uhuru Kenyatta is to make sure that the National Metropolitan Service has some legal backing. Do you think the move that President Uhuru Kenyatta made to make sure the National Metropolitan Service is under the office of the presidency is to escape the question on whether the constitutionality of Nairobi Metropolitan Service is there?
Absolutely not. I think we should look at, in Kenya, we look at the hierarchy of laws. The Constitution stands supreme. So did the Constitution or the framers of the Constitution, did they have in mind that at one point in time, we will have the national government take over this delivery of services of county government? Yes, it did. The instances, we saw MCAs in Taita Taveta, MCAs in Makueni at one point, trying to tell the president to take over the service, the delivery of services in those areas. But in Nairobi, what is the justification? And why is it that the executive is so much inclined to take over the delivery of services. I think Sonko had scored a goal already when he said that he will not, money will not move from the city county to NMS. But now the president saying that the NMS will be receiving funds from the consolidated fund. We know the agencies in government that receive money directly from the consolidated fund. Is NMS one of them? I think I agree with what the Law Society president, my senior, learned senior, Mr. Nelson Harvey said. It is not supported by legislation. It is not supported by law. And I know very soon we'll have people filing cases in court challenging that particular proposal by the president. Just to add onto it, I think that is a way that I think we should county governance should be very keen, because it is a very bad precedent that the national government is trying to set, that they can take over the operations and management of a county through executive orders. Such decisions must be sanctioned by the Senate and the National Assembly. We will not want a situation whereby a president wakes up one morning eyeing a particular county and he just, by the stroke of a pen, he takes the management of it. Or a constitutional body that should be up in arms is the Council of Governors.
All right. Now, finally, do you think the changes that President Uhuru Kenyatta is making, looking at the Executive Order number 1 of 2020, is trying to prepare the country for a referendum, moving the clout from the presidential system, given the changes that you've seen that he has made? Do you think that is what he's doing, preparing the way for the BBI report?
Absolutely not. I think there is no nexus. There is absolutely no nexus. I think with respect to BBI and the referendum bill, I think the question is to Parliament right now. Either will you go through the popular initiative? That's where we're going to have a referendum, or through Parliament. I think right now there is a very close nexus between the executive order and what the president has been doing, more so the purge that you have been witnessing in the National Assembly and in the Senate. I think the president is just trying to put his foot down and trying to tell everyone else out there who has always thought that he's weak and meek, that he's the president and he enjoys certain powers and he can have his way. I think really, I do not see the import of that particular executive order. There are very few changes. If you compare what was issued a few years ago and what we have now, there are very few changes, really. There are very few changes. So I don't think there is a nexus between the referendum bill and the executive order number 1, 2020.
Perhaps, what do you think the executive order of 2020 is meant to bring in terms of change? Is the change for the beneficial of the administration of President Uhuru Kenyatta, or is it just a change to make sure that people realize that he indeed is the president of Kenya and requires all the respect that is required for his accordance?
Absolutely. I think the second point that you made is what I agree with. The president is just trying to assert himself. There is nothing else. He's trying to assert himself. We have not seen anything novel. You know, if you read the executive order top down, you will not really see anything that a silver bullet that once it is implemented, then we are going to see a paradigm shift in which the government has been operating. Nothing at all. So I think it's the president trying to assert himself. That is why you see glaring legal errors made by an attorney general, someone who has been an individual who has been a judge for God knows how long, really making very those are greenhorn mistakes, legal mistakes that someone makes. I think kudos to Maraga and how he responded. We want to see the commissioners of other constitutional offices. We want to see lawyers. We want to see the civil society up in arms, trying to tell the president that even though you have a political fight that you're fighting right now with your unknown adversaries, please do it within the principles of the law.
There has been Mr. Alex Kubo, who is an advocate and also political analyst, putting things into perspective when it comes to the Executive Order No.1 of 2020 that was given by President Uhuru Kenyatta yesterday. He says that there is nothing that has changed when it comes to the office of the Deputy President William Ruto, and it's only political rhetorics being made concerning that particular order. We're taking a short break, but once